Here in this sanctuary of ancient dreams, this sanctuary of wisdom and beauty, we come to grow, to be healed, to stretch mind and heart, to be challenged and renewed, to be helped in our own continuing struggles for meaning and for love, to help build a world with more justice and mercy in it, to be counted among the hopers and the doers. In the face of cynicism, darkness and brutality around us and within, we seek to align ourselves with a living community that would affirm rather than despair, that would think and act rather than simply adjust and succumb. Here we invite the spirit of our own humanity and the healing power under, around and through and beyond it to give us the nerve and the grace, the toughness and the sensitivity to search out the truth that frees, the love that moves, and the onward flowing life that makes all things new. With these words by Jack Mendelsohn, welcome all who have gathered this morning for our Sunday service. Welcome to those of you who have braved the weather to be here in person in Essex Church. Welcome to anyone joining us via Zoom from far and wide, and indeed anyone joining via the podcast or the YouTube stream at a later date. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Jane Blackall and I'm minister with Kensington Unitarians. This morning's service is all about virtue. This is a subject I've been fascinated by for years now. It really captured my imagination when I was studying ethics at Heathrow over a decade ago. Down the ages, philosophers have wrestled with this question of what it means to be good, what it means to live a good life. And one reputable way of answering that question is through the lens of virtue. Our theme this week was suggested by our own Julia Alden, and later in the service, Julia will share her experience as an educator of working with the Virtues Project, which aims to bring about character development and even social transformation. And of course, during the service, we'll be reflecting on the place of virtue in our own lives. But before we go any further, let's do what we always do. Let's light our chalice flame. It's a moment for us to pause, to arrive, to be here now. Perhaps set aside any preoccupations we came in carrying. This ritual connects us with Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists the world over and reminds us that we're part of a proudly historic, progressive religious tradition. A chalice lit in our midst is a symbol of our bold and progressive faith tradition. A faith built on the foundation of freedom, reason and tolerance. A faith sustained by acts of kindness and justice. A faith that visions a world flourishing with equality for all her people. A faith that demands the living out of truth and goodness. A faith that requires thoughtfulness and mutual care. A faith of wholeness, authenticity and liberation. And this tiny flame symbolises the spark of all of that within each and every one of us. And as it's the second Sunday in Advent, we're also going to light our second Advent candle. Last week's was for hope, and this week it's traditionally lit in the name of peace. Time to sing now. Our first hymn today is number 196 in your purple hymn book. We sing the faith. For those via Zoom, the words will be up on your screen for this hymn and all the hymns today. Please stand or sit as you prefer, and let's sing up as best we can for hymn 196.
We sing the faith which gives us our
So let's take all of those joys and concerns, both spoken and unspoken, into an extended time of prayer and reflection now. This is based on some words by the UU Minister Calvin Dame. You might want to adjust your position to be more comfortable. You might want to close your eyes. If there's a posture that helps you to feel more prayerful, whatever helps you to get into the right state of body and mind for us to pray together and to be fully present in this sacred time and space we're co-creating. Present with yourself, present with each other, and present to that which lies within us and beyond us. Spirit of life, God of all love, in whom we live and move and have our being. We turn our full attention to you, the light within and without, as we tune into the depths of this life and the greater wisdom to which and through which we are all intimately connected. Be with us now as we allow ourselves to drop into the silence and the stillness at the very centre of our being. May we this day be grateful for the gift of life which is ours, remembering that today and always the precious life we have and hold is to us a mystery. May we this day be reminded of the responsibilities that we carry, not so that we may be intimidated or overwhelmed, but so that we may be true to them, so that we may be faithful in carrying them forward. May we this day maintain a sense of perspective, remembering who we are, engaging the tasks at hand, but understanding our own limitations, understanding our own shortcomings, forgiving ourselves and others when we fall short of perfection. May we this day be inspired, be filled with new breath, filled with new enthusiasm, ready to see fresh possibilities, new perspectives, unnoticed avenues for fruitful action and resolution. And may we this day remember those virtues that bless our lives and bless the lives of others. The virtues of caring and concern, the virtues of truthfulness and integrity, the virtues of charity, good work and persistence, remembering that this world may yet be made a little more fair, more just, more equitable by our humble efforts, as we stand up to be counted when it matters and to live according to our faith. And let us take a few quiet moments now to look inward, to get in touch with what's real, what's going on beneath the surface of our lives this morning. Let us notice what we're carrying, perhaps what troubles us, what questions or uncertainties we are faced with, what hopes we nurture. And from that place of realness, silently and inwardly, ask for what you most need right now. And don't get too hung up on who or what you're asking. Maybe it's God. Maybe you're casting it out into the universe. Even if you're the only one to hear your prayer, be clear on what it is you need, what you're asking for in this moment. And let us also be sure to give thanks for what we already have. Let us look back on the week and recall all those moments, be they large or small, moments of kindness, generosity or comfort, perhaps moments of joy. Silently and inwardly, let's take time to savour those gifts, connect with gratitude, and take in the good. And finally, let us turn outwards, shifting our attention to the world around us, from those who are closest to our heart, to neighbours and strangers, the wider community, stretching ever onward, as we sense our connection to every living being we share this planet with, and hold them in love. Spirit of life, God of all love, as this time of prayer draws to a close, we offer up our joys and our concerns, our hopes and our fears, our beauty and our brokenness. And we call on you for insight, healing and renewal. As we look forward now to the coming week, help us to live well each day and be our best selves, using our unique gifts in the service of love, justice and peace. Amen.
Good morning. So this is Virtues for the Modern Age by Alain de Botton. And this piece is a short extract from a blog post by the popular philosopher Alain de Botton, and it was published by his School of Life a little over 10 years ago now, as a follow-up to his book, Religion for Atheists. At that time, he launched a project to promote 10 virtues for the modern age, which he branded as a manifesto for atheists. The virtues he highlighted at that time were resilience, empathy, patience, sacrifice, politeness, humor, self-awareness, forgiveness, hope, and confidence. An interesting selection. He referred to that piece as the Virtues Project, but he's not referring to the same project that Julia is going to talk about later in the service. It seems like lots of people have been drawn to this way of thinking about how to live a good life. Here's what de Botton has to say. The Virtues Project comes as a response to a growing sense that being virtuous has become a strange and depressing notion, while wickedness and evil bask in a peculiar kind of glamour. My ultimate aim is that the project ignites a vital conversation around moral character to increase public interest in becoming more virtuous and connected as a society. In the modern world, the idea of trying to be a good person conjures up all sorts of negative associations of piety, solemnity, bloodlessness, and sexual renunciation, as if goodness was something one would try to embrace only when other more difficult but more fulfilling avenues had been exhausted. Throughout history, societies have been interested in fostering virtues, in training us to be more virtuous. But we're one of the first generations to have zero public interest in this. You're allowed to work on your body. Going to the gym has very high status as an activity. But announce that you're going to work on being more virtuous, and people will be guaranteed to look at you as if you're insane. It sounds deeply weird, even creepy, to suggest that one might work at being nice, that one might work at being better or nicer. It shouldn't, and that's what my manifesto is all about. There's no scientific answer to being virtuous, but the key thing is to have some kind of list on which to flex our ethical muscles. It reminds us that we all need to work at being good, just as we work at anything else that really matters.
Thanks, John. So our next hymn is a slightly unusual one. There was a time when we used to sing this quite a lot, but we haven't done it in years, so I doubt many people remember it. I did put it in the WhatsApp group this week, so some of you might have had a chance to practice. I really love this hymn. I hope we can bring it back into our repertoire. It's on the hymn sheet in your order of service if you're in the room. It's called "Oh, the Beauty in a Life." The words are just perfect for a theme today, so I couldn't not choose it. It's based on a Filipino folk tune, and you might find the rhythm a bit unusual. If you like, I find bobbing along to it helps me keep in track. See how we get on. Let's hear it played through once in full before we go for it, and let's do our best. We'll see how it goes. I think that was a good effort. I think I'll try and find an excuse to sing it again before long so that we get more confident. So I don't know about you, but when I think about life and how I want to go about living it, my basic, really basic starting point is that I want to be a good person and I want to live a good life. I know that does sound ridiculously basic, but for all the sophisticated philosophizing I might have tried to do over the years, for all that this basic intention comes up against the world's troubles and complexities, that idea is still a significant part of the background music of my brain, a part that has always had some kind of influence on my life choices. I want to be good and do good. I'm pretty confident I'm not alone in this basic orientation. That's probably why a lot of us show up at church in the first place. Like I said at the start of the service, philosophers have spent centuries wrestling with this question of what it actually means to be good, do good, live a good life. And one approach to answering that question is by considering this path of virtue. And as we heard in the piece by Alan de Botton that John just read for us, these days it may be considered a bit old-fashioned at best to speak of virtue, to make these efforts to improve our own character or even the character of the whole society. But it seems to me this is something we would do well to embrace in the 21st century too. It's generally thought that the consideration of virtue started with the ancient Greeks. You might not be surprised to hear Plato and Aristotle. I'd say that Aristotle especially is perhaps regarded as the godfather of virtue ethics. He wrote about the telos of life, the ultimate end of life, the purpose or the point of it all as being something he called eudaimonia. I've seen this term translated in various ways. Living in a way that is well favoured by God is one way to put it if you're God-minded. More often it's described as flourishing, a deep and holistic kind of happiness. Living a good and meaningful life, that is the point of existence according to Aristotle, broadly speaking. I'd suggest we might even embellish that a little bit further, connecting it to notions such as self-realisation, fulfilling our potential, contributing to the common good. I think they're all wrapped into it. It's not about transient pleasure and happiness, but about a life that is good when considered as a whole. And cultivation of the virtues is a significant part of this path to eudaimonia. Thomas Aquinas, the Dominican theologian and Catholic saint, he picked up the idea of virtue in medieval times, and he defined virtue as a habit and disposition by which we live righteously, of which no one can make bad use, which God works in us without us. Aquinas was especially associated with the four cardinal virtues: justice, fortitude, temperance and prudence, which actually, if you're in the church, they're depicted on the front of your order of service, and if you're at home, it's on the list of all the services. There's the same picture. This idea of there being four cardinal virtues has been around since Plato's time, but Aquinas made a bit more of it. For him, these are the principal virtues which will help us rise to the challenge of living a good and meaningful human life. Justice is the disposition which gives us concern for other people and for the common good. Fortitude, which is basically the same as courage, is the disposition that enables us to endure suffering, persist in hard work, and face our fears for the sake of what is ultimately worthwhile. Temperance is the disposition of moderation and self-control. In a modern context, you might think about it in terms of what we consume, what we give our attention to and our time to. And prudence is the quality that brings them all together, otherwise known as practical wisdom or a kind of know-how, knowing how to make good decisions about our actions and the overall direction our life is heading in. And Aquinas also made a thing about the theological virtues, which in fact are familiar to most of us. They were in the first hymn we sang today: faith, hope and love. And the story of virtue ethics doesn't end in the medieval period. In fact, there's been a revival of interest of it in contemporary philosophers since Elizabeth Ancombe got the ball rolling again in the 1950s. And there's a lot more people writing about it now. But a key feature that distinguishes virtue ethics from some other ethical frameworks is that it focuses on the person rather than on the action. The central question in any moment is not what should I do, but what kind of person should I be? And that's a lifelong project of personal moral development. Becoming a virtuous person, developing good habits, and as Aquinas says, dispositions. The idea is that in any given situation, the next right action will just come to you as second nature, because that's who you are. Because of the person you are, you will intuitively know what needs to be done next. And that is not to suggest it comes easily. Virtue ethics, one of its virtues, is that it acknowledges the complexity of the moral life. Sometimes different virtues will pull you in different directions and they will seem to conflict with one another. And part of our task is to integrate all these different virtues in ourselves and use this practical wisdom as we live them out. So how do we go about becoming more virtuous? Some virtues come more naturally to us than others. Others are more of a stretch. They're not our temperament. According to the philosophers, one way to think about cultivating virtue is to compare it with acquiring any practical skill or art, like learning to play the piano or something. In general, virtue is something we learn by doing. It takes conscious awareness, The Buddha apparently once said, "As we think, so we become." And it takes a lot of patience and persistence too, a lot of practice. To start with, it might feel like we're going through the motions, but by acting as if we are that virtuous person, we can kind of get ourselves into this virtuous circle. It reinforces our good intentions. Sometimes you do just have to fake it till you make it. Virtue is not just a habit of behaviour, though. It needs to take root in us more deeply than that, to shape our very character, so that in time we think and we feel and we desire from this virtuous place, and we can reliably discern what is good. If we want to be a good person, if we want to live a good life, focusing on virtue is a pretty good place to start. So that said, I'm going to hand over to Julia now, so that we can focus in on a particular virtue for our time of meditation.
Thanks, Jane. Well, we're moving into a time of meditation now, and we're going to do something slightly different to take us into this time of meditation. Though, as we always say, this is an invitation and not an obligation, so you don't have to join in if you do not want to. The invitation is for us to randomly pick a Virtues Project card. I'm going to tell you more about the Virtues Project in a little bit. And we're using a deck of the Virtues Project's reflection cards. There are 100, this is my pack, I've been using it for about 10 years now. And there are 100 here, obviously, in different projects. You have different amounts of Virtues cards. Jane and I are going to come around and we're going to allow you to pick one of these Virtues cards. If you're joining on Zoom, you can join via the website, virtuesproject.com, and the link was in your Friday email, and Charlotte will also put it in the chat for you now. So if you go onto the website and you scroll down the front page, it says, "What are virtues?" There's an orange button which says, "Do a virtues pick," and that will pop up with a randomly generated virtue for you. So, as I said, the Virtues Project recognizes 100 virtues, and a virtues pick can be an essential practice to remember our inherent nobility and to be able to understand ourselves and one another. It asks us to reflect on any aspect of our life and of the world, and it can guide us at any moment we feel the need. So I'm going to give half of these to Jane, and we're going to go around and we're going to ask you to pick one. We can use these virtues cards in many ways for reflection, but for today, this is what we would like you to reflect on and would like you to do. So as you get the virtues cards, you reflect on something in your life right now, or what the virtue might suggest to you in this moment. So after you get your card, we'll give you a couple of moments of reflective time, 3 minutes. Please don't force this or worry if nothing comes to mind. That's okay too. One never knows. The connection might come later or not at all. Once everyone has a card, that's when we will begin the 3-minute meditation. And that finishes with the chime of the bell, as we normally do. And just to say, the virtues card has both sides. So the first side is that you use is the one with the longer written piece.
We should also say that Julia wants these back at the end.
Sorry? Over the past few years, Jane and I have had some conversations about virtues. I'm really grateful today to be able to present the Virtues Project after those conversations. Primarily, our discussions have revolved around my involvement in the Virtues Project, and I'll tell you a bit about that. My first introduction to the practice of virtues was in the 90s when I lived and worked in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and participated in an interfaith group. Many of the members just happened to be of the Baha'i faith, and there I learned that the virtues have quite a presence in the Baha'i religion. The Baha'i faith emphasizes cultivating virtues as central to spiritual and personal development. I could say that there, without a church or a formal place of worship, the virtues became a way for me to practice my spirituality. They also were very akin to the principles of the Unitarian Church. I found the virtues engaging and began thinking of how I might use them in my everyday life as a spiritual marker or a way to personal transformation. Our gatherings also considered the virtues essential to establishing a more just and unified world. The virtues of justice, kindness, patience, and humility, among others, were discussed and linked to the practices of our daily lives. I strongly related to the distinction between virtues rooted in universal philosophical traditions, such as Jane has talked about, and values which are often influenced by more practical, subjective factors. A decade later, while living and working in Singapore, I met another international educator who used virtues in her school. Here, the virtues were used to promote character development, create positive environments, and improve social emotional learning with students. This was my formal introduction to the Virtues Project. The Virtues Project was founded in 1991 by then psychologist Linda Kavalin-Popov, her brother Dan, and her husband John. It was established to address the growing challenges of violence, moral decline, and a lack of ethical awareness in individuals and communities. Essentially, it was to empower individuals by recognizing their strengths or virtues, build stronger families, and transform communities. In Kavalin-Popov's words, having a sense of meaning and purpose, living with integrity, according to a person's highest beliefs and values, mastery of the virtues of our character, and developing a sense of reverence for life and all people are what the virtues are about. The Virtues Project is not about the practices or beliefs of any one religion. It is sourced in the teachings about virtues found in the sacred traditions of all cultures. Its purpose is to support all people, both religious and those who are not religious, to awaken the virtues of their character. It defines spirituality as our connection to principles and a sense of higher purpose that inspire us to live meaningful lives. Kavalin's work and the Virtues Project have become known internationally and have been implemented in schools, organizations, and even businesses worldwide. It is still today an internationally recognized organization that contributes to the building of peace and reconciliation. The United Nations has recognized the project, and Kavalin-Popov has made it her life's work. I went forward with this project when I retired and returned to London. I tried to implement the work in schools, but it has not taken off here in the UK for different reasons. It is, however, flourishing in schools in North and South America, Africa, Australia, and parts of Asia. I have been able to, nevertheless, be a part of a sub-project of the Virtues Project by working with a team over the last few years to develop a system for recognizing schools that are using the Virtues Project. Our work is to create a certification process identifying schools worldwide that embed the virtues into the school curriculum. We then want to begin collecting data to study how the virtues impact on the well-being of students and school communities. As an educator, most of my work with the Virtues Project focused on schools. I have many stories of how virtues are used in schools to build character and promote positive relationships. One school in New Zealand uses puppets to role play with young students to teach the virtues. The Ignite Academy in Alberta, Canada has created a library of books that support the teaching of virtues in authentic context. One early learning center in Finland has used the Virtues Project in its philosophy and its mission. In Tanzania, right now, the Virtues Project is used in many schools as a way to replace caning as a discipline in their schools. I have myself used the virtues here in London. I did a couple of years in Lambeth as social emotional learning with students, and I have a library of my own of books that are phenomenal for teaching the virtues. I'm looking at Hannah because I know she uses books extensively in her work. And also puppets. I have a large array of puppets at home that I have used. And I have to say that kids really, really relate to that. And it's just such an authentic way of teaching the virtues. The Virtues Project is quite broad and far-reaching. It would take some time to portray the entire breadth of the project. However, 5 significant components or strategies guide the project's work. In the Virtues Project, we first and foremost speak the language of virtues. How we talk to one another and our words have tremendous power to discourage or inspire. Life gives us daily challenges to help cultivate our character. These are the teachable moments. To be safe in our relationships, we need to use the strategy of setting clear boundaries. Personal boundaries help us build healthy relationships and protect our time, energy, and health. Giving respect to each person's dignity, taking care of ourselves, and ensuring that we find beauty and reverence in life is called honoring the spirit in the Virtues Project. When we honor the spirit, we ask ourselves, what really brings us joy? And lastly, companioning is our capacity to listen and be present with others. When we are deeply present and listen with compassion, we empower others to reflect on their virtues. I'm often asked if virtues still matter. We've heard that today as well. And are they appropriate for our schools and the modern world? I can't think of anything more imperative for young children and really everyone in today's world. In the Virtues Project, we say that social transformation starts with young people. Fostering strength, building healthy relationships, providing ethical guidance, and purposeful living are more important today than ever before. Using virtues with young people has the hope of power to reverse a culture of violence and hate, maybe for all of us. However, we do not need to use the entire project to benefit personally. We can all use the virtues as a guide to our daily lives, just as you practiced a minute ago. I offer that virtues are essential for all of us and are still present and sought after in how we live and in the principles that guide us as individuals and in our communities. You might remember that at the start of the year, all members of the Kensington Unitarians were invited to send to Jane our reflections about the values that we share in this community and how we put those values into action. The idea was that we would collectively generate a description of what we care about and what we care about and what we aim to do and be together. Jane pulled together all these statements into something that was read out at the induction service to mark the start of the ministry back in January. And you can find that selection of those principles and statements on the website. Looking at these principles and practices, which affirm what we strive to be and what we consider to be meaningful and purposeful, I found that each statement highlighted a virtue, kindness, generosity, wisdom, honesty, creativity, equality, and justice, just to name a few. One statement, for example, reads, "We believe everybody has wisdom and insight to share, so we make creative contributions according to their talents." Virtues are alive and well in our principles and practices at Kensington Unitarians. I appreciate this concept of virtues being used to strive for how we want to be. That is aspirational, personal transformations. Isn't that what we're striving for? I wanted to be sure today that I was not proselytizing. I wondered if my presentation on the virtues could be considered arrogant, portraying an exaggerated sense of my importance or the arrival at some specific virtuous place in my life. That is not my intention. I am a huge work in progress. I am striving, as I think we all are. Virtues are tools that help me on this journey to a better life, to think, act, and to do well, or to be good, and to employ a practical way to reflect on problems and moral issues. So with that in mind, I chose a virtues card to reflect on for this situation. It was acceptance. I'm just reading from the card now. Acceptance is embracing life on its own terms. We are open to what is rather than wishing for something different. We face the truth in all circumstances with honesty and courage. Acceptance helps us to bend without breaking in the winds of tests, to gather the lessons, and to step forward with new wisdom and awareness. We affirm others and ourselves for our qualities and avoid judgment or criticism for what we don't have. Accepting allows me to give what I have to the world. Virtues are the essence of who we are. They are attributes of the human spirit and the content of our character. The Baha'i faith calls them the gems that we are all born with and we have within. Our task is to cultivate them to the fullest. Thank you, Jane, for letting me do this. Thank you. I'm grateful.
Thank you, Julia. What a fantastic topic, and so interested in your work with the project. We've got one last hymn to sing now. The last hymn is number 84 in your purple books, Justice for Persons. I think, again, it's one we don't sing that often, so we'll hear it through once before we sing. Hymn number 84. Just a few announcements then. Many thanks to Julia for suggesting the theme and for giving our reflection today. And don't forget to give your virtues cards back to Julia at the end of the service. Yes, you can take a photo if you want to ponder it further. Thank you to Ramona for tech hosting, Charlotte for co-hosting at home. I can see that Pat and Anna are already off to make the coffee. Thanks to John for reading and for greeting. Thanks to Abby, Andrew and Benji for all the lovely music. If you're here in person, stay for tea and cake. It's a chocolate tray bake today. I'm sure it tastes nice, but the decoration did not go well. So try and overlook that. We've got various activities coming up in the week ahead. Tonight and Friday at 7 online, we've got our regular Heart and Soul contemplative spiritual gathering, and this week's theme is adventure. Sign up with me if you want to come. All being well, we'll have community singing on Wednesday at 7. It was fantastic last time, but we never quite know if it's going to go ahead or not till the last minute. So let me know if you're planning to come, and I'll tell you about last minute changes. The Better World Book Club this month is on Golden, The Power of Silence in a World of Noise. That's on the 29th of December, slight change to the date. I think we've got one copy left at the back if you want to borrow that and come along. I particularly want to draw your attention to the New Year's mini retreat. I've got a decent number of sign-ups for the online version on New Year's Day, but the in-person version on the 29th of December is in doubt at present because I think I've only got 1 or 2 people that are definites for that. So if you are going to want to come to the in-person version, let me know very soon. Similarly, I've not had a lot of feedback about the tea dance on the 22nd. I would love to have a good turnout for that because it might be the last one we do for a while, so please let me know if you're going to come along and support it one way or another. Next week is our big Sunday carol service. We'll have the quartet of singers and our favourite festive music. We'll also have a lunch afterwards, so don't forget to let Patricia know if you're coming to the lunch so that we know we've got enough food for everyone of a suitable variety. And as usual, we'll have our candlelit Christmas Eve service, 5 o'clock on Christmas Eve. It's a misprint in the news there. It's definitely at 5 o'clock like it always is. And as Carolyn has already said, she's organising a dinner out afterwards. Am I allowed to say where it is? Come up.
Yes, right. It's going to be at Pizza Express, and you can look at the menu today. I just want to say I would like you, everybody is welcome. If you're a bit short of money, don't worry about that. Whisper it to me. I would like everybody to pay me a cash deposit of about £5 to secure your place, but don't worry, that will go towards your bill. And if unfortunately you can't make it and you can afford it, then that deposit will go towards church funds, otherwise you can have it back. So this is to Pizza Express on the 24th of December, after the candlelit carol service. We'll be going along the road for 7 p.m. until 9, and there is an extensive menu including gluten-free, and it's wheelchair accessible, and you'll be able to hear because we can use the room at the back. I hope I've covered everything. Come and see me at coffee time to book your place.
And thank you again for doing that, because finding somewhere that was open on Christmas Eve, wheelchair accessible and not too noisy was quite an ask. That's why you're at Pizza Express. Okay, all these activities are on the back of your order of service. They're in the Friday email, or you could take home a copy of the fancy newsletter if you haven't already done so. The congregation has a life beyond Sunday mornings, so let's look out for each other and do what we can to nurture supportive connections. Just time for our closing words and closing music. We leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection, our concerns, and our care for each other. Our service to each other, the world, and the promptings of our faith goes on. So until we're together again, be strong, be well, be true, and be loving, and nurture goodness wherever you go. Amen.